Hi, my name is Tyreek Moore, CEO of TJT Consulting Services. And the topic that I want to discuss with you today is alignment versus agreement. If you've ever walked out of a meeting feeling like everyone was on the same page and then watched everything go sideways just a week later, you already understand alignment versus agreement. Not intellectually, maybe, but experientially. Most teams don't actually struggle with disagreement. They struggle with polite agreement that never turns into real ownership. People nod, they say yes, they move on to the next agenda item. And then everyone goes back to doing their own version of what they thought was decided. Not because people are dishonest, but because no one slowed down long enough to create alignment. Alignment is different. Alignment is what happens when people don't just understand the decision, they commit to the responsibility. Agreement is conversational. Alignment is behavioral. Agreement feels cooperative. Alignment becomes operational. When you have agreement, people acknowledge what was said. When you have alignment, people own what was decided. You can feel the difference. Agreement ends when the meeting ends. Alignment shows up when priorities collide, timelines tighten, and pressure hits. Agreement is polite. Alignment is accountable. And this is why misalignment is so costly. Because when people are not truly aligned, responsibility gets fuzzy. Expectations get blurred. Ownership gets diffused. And slowly, the organization becomes heavier. Decisions slow down. Communication gets guarded. Talented people get quieter. Not because they don't care, but because they don't feel connected to the outcome. Let me bring this into a real leadership moment. Picture a senior leadership team that meets and agrees that innovation is a top priority. Everyone nods, everyone supports it, but no one actually reprioritizes time. No one reallocates budget. No one changes what they reward or tolerate. So innovation exists just as a word, but execution still rewards speed, risk avoidance, and predictability. That is agreement without alignment. And what happens next is pretty predictable. People stop bringing bold ideas. They stop challenging the status quo. They stop taking smart risks. Not because they're uncreative, but because the system is not aligned to support what it says it values. Alignment is what makes values real. It's what turns language into behavior. Alignment is what tells your people this is what actually matters here. Now, imagine the opposite. Imagine a leadership team that does not just agree on priorities, but changes what they reward, what they tolerate, and what they model. Deadlines, metrics, feedback, promotion, recognition, all reinforce the same priorities. Now people are not guessing what matters. They know. And when people know what matters, they move faster. They make better decisions. And they take ownership without being chased. Alignment is what turns culture into a performance engine. Now let's talk a bit about collective brilliance. Collective brilliance is what happens when your team becomes smarter together than any one of them alone could ever be. It's what you feel in those rare meetings where ideas start stacking, where people are building on each other instead of protecting themselves, where the room feels alive instead of cautious. But this doesn't just happen by accident. It happens because people feel safe. They feel respected. They feel trusted, and they feel responsible. When people feel safe, they speak honestly. When they feel respected, they challenge ideas constructively. When they feel trusted, they step into ownership. And when they feel responsible, performance goes up. Now, let me show you what it looks like when this is missing. People start bringing partial ideas. They keep the bold part to themselves. They wait to see what leadership thinks first. They avoid challenging flawed decisions. Over time, innovation slows. Risk-taking disappears, and the organization becomes very good at maintaining exactly what already exists and very bad at building what is next. This is how companies slowly lose relevance. Not overnight, but quietly. Now imagine the opposite. A room where people can say, I don't think this will work, without any fear. A room where leaders invite challenge, where ideas get sharpened in the actual room instead of in the hallways, where mistakes are treated as data instead of failure. Those teams, they move faster. They learn quicker. They recover stronger. They outperform others consistently. That is collective brilliance in action. And here's the truth. You cannot command brilliance. You must create the conditions for it. Those conditions are psychological safety, trust, clarity, and accountability. How they compound each other, that's the best part. And this is where it all comes together. Alignment gives your people direction. Collective brilliance gives them power. Alignment answers. Collective brilliance answers. But they answer different things. What matters and where are we going? How do we do this better than anyone else? Without alignment, collective brilliance has no direction. Without collective brilliance, alignment has no innovation. Together, they create organizations that move faster, think deeper, and perform better. Aligned and brilliant teams solve problems earlier. They make better decisions. They innovate more consistently. They retain their best people longer. And this is why TJT exists. We do not help teams just work together. We help them think together, own together, and build together. We help organizations move from polite agreement to powerful alignment, and from individual talent to collective brilliance. Because the future belongs to teams who can think together, own together, and build together. And when you have alignment, collective brilliance becomes inevitable.